Okay, today I was asked if I've ever used the Aurora Borealis rays and the Milky Way stamp together. And I haven't before, because I tend to think about the Aurora Borealis and the northern lights of having, a lot of light in the night sky, and not really having kind of a more of a moonless night where you would have more of the lights, the starlight showing. Okay, but this is stamping, so you can kind of do whatever you want. All right, so I'm going to use this. Usually, when you see the kind of the ray style of Aurora Borealis, it's usually kind of coming from the horizon from the photographs that I've seen. The more curtainy type is more kind of suspended, okay? But I've seen more of the ray style, a little bit lower on the horizon. But again, this is rubber stamping, so you can kind of do whatever you want. But I see these kind of rays kind of emanating out like that. So we'll do a couple impressions down at the base of this. And then I'll have it transition out into kind of a more of a darker night sky using that Milky Way stamp. All right, so that being said, you can do different types of color schemes using night or any type of celestial body, okay? You can do more of the greenish type of color scheme. I'm thinking about going for more of the blue tones. I think that's something that they this individual also asked about because they showed me a pen and they want to incorporate some of this pen into their scene, and it was a blue one. I don't know what particular color it was, but let's use some of that. Okay, now the Aurora Borealis right here, the rays or curtain design that I have in the Stampscapes line, you want to stamp it, unless you're going for something really super light in terms of a sky, you would stamp this out in a medium or darker tone, okay? This stamp is made up of all these condensed little dots, so that if you stamp it out really lightly, okay, it's going to be really, really pale. Well, you'll just barely see these rays coming out. So this is indexed in just black ink right here, and you can see kind of how delicate they are, so that if you stamped them in lighter tones, they probably wouldn't stand up to all the toning, additional tones that you would add over the top of it. So, that being said, I'm going to go with a navy blue here, and although this is a navy blue, this is not a solid design, so we're talking little tiny dots here. So it should stamp out a lot lighter, right? Okay, now here's one of the things that I demonstrated in sky stamping video lessons. This is going to be a rectangle right here, okay? So what I do is I blot off the perimeter about an inch or so with a dry paper towel like that, okay? You can even streak it inward in the direction of those rays. Okay, so what that does is it creates a lighter impression on the perimeter, and therefore when it stamps out lighter on the perimeter and softer, it transitions easier into the other imagery that you might surround it with, including itself, okay? So you can see that right there. See how it just kind of fades off around the edge? That's an easy technique to do. You just kind of blot it out like that, okay? So, usually when you go for multiple impressions of any given sky figure, what you want to do is you want to re-ink it. You might be able to go for a second impression sometimes, but I'd really recommend re-inking it and just going through this process again, okay? All right, so if we want a little bit of an extra ray type of thing, I'll go for I try to keep the rays kind of going generally in the same direction. Okay, something like that. Looks kind of weird as is, but, usually tone in like that to keep those kind of rays and those fingers of light kind of continuing up into that area. Okay, so this one right here is fairly solid. Okay, there is dots in here, right? But a lot of these areas in here are fairly solid. It's almost the opposite of this stamp right here, right? So when we think about blending these two together, it doesn't seem like it would would it? Because it's so solid against so tonal. Okay? Very dark and solid, very light and airy. But I'll show you where that blotting off really comes into play. Okay, now let's do a little bit with this pen as well. Okay, we're just doing this all with that same blue ink. It's kind of a navy blue. It's just called blue from Marvy. It's number 3 blue. Okay, this is just a watercolor pen. This is a Marvy ink too, so it's the same type of ink. It's a different color though. This one's a lighter blue. This one's the manganese blue. It's one of my favorite blues, but it's been diluted because I think I've refilled it with a little bit of water, or a lot of water, because this pen had been sitting around for probably 20 years. Okay, so take this, and what are we going to do? We're going to blot it off on the edge. Don't be too gingerly with it. Really, tap into it, pretty good. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add this Milky Way. I can overlap into the Aurora Borealis a little bit. I don't want to do it too much. I can overlap quite a bit if I wanted to, but I would eradicate a lot of those rays. And we want those rays to be showing. So, in this case, about a half an inch or so, maybe. All right, so I hope you can see that variation of blue in there. It's not all that uniform blue. Okay, let's see if I can make this a quick scene here. I always say that, but then it's like I get really enthusiastic about all the little details and things like that, and I really get into the scenes, so sometimes they end up being, these video lessons end up being a lot longer than what I would think they would be in terms of the concept of them, from the concept to the final result. That's what they say art is, or one definition of art. It's the difference between the initial concept and the final result, meaning that, along the way you just kind of make your adjustments and, I don't know, modifications to that original idea that you had in mind. Okay, so I'm overlapping, I don't know, at least an inch into the previous impression. You can kind of move it around too, make it a little bit more varied. Okay. I mean, with this Milky Way, you don't really have to wipe it off too much. It's designed pretty well in terms of the blending capabilities of it, but wiping it off just makes it a little bit more graceful. See, like right here, let me not wipe it off at all, and I'll just fill in this space right here, okay? Let's just go like that. So see that it's overlapping quite a bit, and at a different angle, and there's just no line whatsoever. But where you're coming into this more delicate image, like if I go like that, I'm really going to, be mindful of wiping off this part right here, where it transitions into this more delicate tonal image. This is all tonal up here, but it's a lot more solid as well. Okay, so bottom part right here, wipe it off pretty good. All right, don't take off all the ink or something like that. All right, so this is the bottom part where I took off a lot of ink, and it's going into this one. Let's overlap it about half an inch or so. Up here, I'm overlapping, I don't know, an inch. So you see, you don't have to be super delicate about anything, okay? Sometimes if you're more careful, it's a little bit more of a precarious kind of exercise, because you're kind of stressing out about the overlap and the transitions and whatnot. And when you stamp these out too, don't kind of rock it like this, be it an unmounted stamp or a mounted stamp, otherwise you're going to get the edges really kind of pronounced, because you're getting the ink off of the edge of the stamp. All right, tiny little technique tweak there, or advice. Okay, so we have something like that. Now, this up here alone, it's just a very loud section here with all that texture. So what do? You we want to subdue some of that. Okay, let me take some of Distress ink, tumbled glass. This is the same ink that's used on the sand pads. I just use it in re-inker form because it's so easy to do this toning with it when you get a big glob of ink on whatever applicator you're going with. In this case, it's just a wadded up paper towel. Okay, a very busy sky here, so let's go in and tone in. This is a 8.5 by 5.5 piece of glossy cardstock. You can do this on, you know, a matte cardstock or a silk coated cardstock, dull coated cardstock. The more matte you have, the less coating on it, so the more absorbent it becomes. So kind of one dollop of ink doesn't go spread around as easily, or as far, I should say, as a coated glossy cardstock, because you have that extra bit of coating on there to kind of seal it off. Okay, so see, now here, I'm leaving some of these stars light, but you can see some of these areas I really, you know, toned in quite a bit. All right, now let's address this Aurora Borealis stamp, okay? We want these fingery rays to be showing, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into it like this, but I'll leave those fingers of light visible, okay? In fact, this one might be a kind of a good opportunity for those pigment ink, white pigment ink ray types of things kind of going up there. I've never used it with the Aurora Borealis stamp before, so maybe I'll do that. Yeah, I'll show you what I mean when I get to that. Okay, that was tumbled glass. I think a little bit more. What you're doing with this first ink here is you're coloring, but you're also kind of saturating the page, and that's one of the big differences between kind of the end result resolution of some scenes and others, okay? It means that we're used to, in most types of coloring, we're used to coloring in something. And you color it once, and then when you get it all coated, that's it, you move on to your next ink. But one of the things that I've found that makes it so much easier to apply darker tones and to get a really rich finished surface is what you do is you kind of coat and you layer more ink down. Even though you think you're done, sometimes you can get a little bit darker, a little bit more vibrant and rich by adding on a second, a third, a fourth layer of whatever color you're using with, you know, when you might feel inclined to move on to the next one, okay? You just keep working with those existing colors, and what you'll find is by just using more of it, a lot of times, it gets, you know, richer and darker. Now, when it's just not getting any darker, using that existing color that you're working with, then move to the next one, okay? That's how you know to move on to the next one, is when, you know, the previous one just, you're not seeing any changes at all. All right, this one's Broken China. Oh, can't use that one. That's my black palette, maybe. All right, so Broken China. What is this one? It's another blue, and it's a little bit darker, okay? There we go, like that. Can you see the two different types of blue on here? This one looks really dark, but it's really not that dark. See, it's just barely darker. It's just because it's in a little blob right there. It looks so much darker. Okay, remember, right here is where people a lot of times start losing that. A lot of times they'll lose the their lighting because they'll go over everything. You know, they get real comfortable with this kind of application process. So when you're doing this and you're applying ink, this is what I mentioned in my previous video, which I don't know if I've thought about before, but when I'm doing this, when I'm applying this ink, this blue ink, what I'm looking at is the light in there. I'm not necessarily looking at that color, but I'm looking at the lighting, okay? A lot of times people lose their lighting because when they're applying color, I think they're focused in on the color application, which, you know, you certainly have in mind, but I'm kind of more focused in on those rays right there. So I'm looking at the rays, the white rays right there. And that's where my, a lot of my focus is. More so than on how dark it's becoming with this one. I probably look and see how dark it's getting with a couple swipes like this, but then I start focusing on the retention of the light areas more. Okay, so that's two different colors right there. It's getting a little bit more vibrant, and this area in here is becoming a little bit more focused. I think I'm going to blot off some of this. It's a little bit too light everywhere, okay? I talk about checkerboarding in a lot of my videos, dark light, dark light. But on something like this, when we're talking about a night sky, I don't think I want to go all the way to white everywhere in there, okay? So maybe I'll leave a couple streaks of light in here, and like up here and here, we'll just get darker. All right, now you can use all kinds of different colors. Let's see if I have any memento blues. I thought I did. What is this one? Lulu Lavender. This one is Summer Sky. That one's really light. London Fog. That's a gray. Let's see. Okay, here's Mermaid Lagoon. Another Distress ink. What I'm doing is I'm kind of moving a little bit darker with each value of blue that I'm working with. Okay. All right. I know you can't get more simple than that in terms of an applicator, okay? And readily available. Could be any kind of a paper towel or napkin or whatever. Rag. All right. Mermaid Lagoon really looks like the Marvy number 10 light blue, it's called. It's one of the hottest days on record, I would think, where I am, in Southern California. I don't remember the weather forecast looking like 115 degrees or 110 degrees or something like that. I thought, wow, even like 103 is really hot here. So I was going to do a winter scene today, snowy kind of winter scene, Christmas type of thing. But then someone asked me about this. I thought, oh, well, that's kind of a cooler color scheme potentially to this nighttime type of sky. So this is what we're doing here. Okay, this is going into the number 3 Marvy blue. You see, this is the blue that I stamped my Milky Way in, as well as the Aurora Borealis. To apply a little bit more color, then you have to kind of dab it, because if you're kind of wiping, sometimes you're kind of wiping the color right off. As the inks get built up on the paper a little bit, they become a little bit more surface oriented before you have to kind of tap on like that rather than wipe, because you're kind of wiping off a lot of color or ink. Not the one that's already dried on here, but I'm just saying if it's a little bit damp on the surface, it feels like you're kind of removing ink as well, even more so than applying it. All right. My gosh, this ink is drying really fast. It's because it's so hot and arid today. And we've also had the air conditioning running, so it kind of dries things out a little bit more. I feel like I'm out in Arizona at the Mesa stamp convention with it really hot outside and really, really dry inside with the air conditioning just blasting. We're not blasting the air conditioning where I am here, but I can feel this ink drying very quickly. Okay, so that's number 3 blue. You see how it's kind of getting darker, and there's these rays a little bit more prominent. Okay, I think this is a good time to, I'm going to keep this one right here, this applicator. Let's go for another applicator here. This is the one that I probably used yesterday or the day before, I can't remember. Let's go for some pinks in here. I really like this type of color scheme up here with the night Milky Way sky with some violets. Okay, now I know these aren't violet right here, but pink plus purple equals kind of violet, right? So if you have the basics of color blending down, you know, blue and yellow make green, blue and pink makes purple, and then like a pink and yellow make orange, right? When you think about it that way, and when you're thinking about inks to purchase, okay, like if you have a full range of blue tones and like a light green or something like that, you can add that light green into entire range of blues like this. I can turn this all green if I want to, just by putting yellow right over the top of it. Or I can turn it all violet just by putting pink over it. So when you think about purchases, okay, let's say you don't have any inks at all. What you might do is you might just think kind of one step ahead, you know, in terms of your purchases. If, you know, you're on a budget, if you're not just buying every ink out there, okay, you can mix and match. You can, if you're not going to stamp out imagery, like I don't stamp out imagery with this pink right here, so I could just have the reinker of it too. But I know that a light pink, okay, like this one right here, added to a range of different blue tones will give me a range of all these different violet tones, okay? So you can really make your, you know, money really go a long way with the use of mixtures. Add a pink, a really bright pink, to the blues, you get the violets. You add a yellow to the blues, you get all these greens. Okay, see that what I'm doing right there? I'm getting some different types of values, because I'm not putting this pink everywhere, turning everything, you know, violet. What I'm doing is I'm just using it here and there, so I get little variations of violet, maybe some dark violets out here, some pinks as it transitions into that white right there. So you can do all kinds of different things like this. It's really fun watching those different hues being developed. It's not physically mixing, but what we have is just these transparent dye-based inks laying over other colors, and the other colors are going to show through and affect what you see in the end result. See that right there? I just kind of put a little tinge of pink down here, but I didn't eradicate my light. Going down here with a, you know, a super bright pink like that might eradicate my light, but what I do is I just blend in some very light versions of it, and it gives me a lighter version of that pink, and it'll give me variations on those violet tones. It's kind of mixtured, you know, mixed tones, okay? I mean, you can use things like this. This one's deep lilac right here, and I can get a, you know, lilac color by using lilac, okay? But just to come to show you how you can achieve these different colors just by simply using blends. And one of the things on one of my videos, I called it color glows and how to achieve them. See, I'm kind of dipping into the color on the color wheel that's right next to blue, which is violet. And by blending in violet in here, by bringing in those analogous colors, or introducing analogous colors into this color scheme right here, what you do is it creates a color glow visually. Okay, and having kind of glowing colors really enhances kind of the overall kind of feeling of a given color scheme. This image can look good like this way too, huh? I was thinking about it. This is like bottom and this is top, but this, I don't know, it looks good just about every other, every way that you do it. That's one of those things, when you get into these scenes, especially if it's a nighttime sky like this, or using any kind of sky imagery, you can really change. You can do the background first like this and stamp, silhouettes of trees or something like that over the top of it. And you can decide, after you get this layout established of the background, of what side's up and what side's down. You don't have to kind of hold to a preconceived notion of top and bottom if you get to, when you get further along, just the configuration looks like it'll work better from a different angle. You can rotate it or whatever. This is Prussian blue, and I'm really trying to create a strong vignette. Areas that you make the image darker, or the background darker in this case. The lighter areas will seem one step lighter, or proportionately lighter, the darker you make other areas. It doesn't have to be around the perimeter. You can have a darker area in the middle if you want to. I usually don't, but you could. It's just all about contrasts. Let's try violet in here. This one's a really quite bright violet. I almost never use it. But since this is a violet toned scene, let's add it in here. It doesn't look too violet. It almost looks like just darker blue. Let me see. Well, I guess there is still a lot of dark blue in there. Maybe I'm just applying a lot of the blue that was, the residual blue that was in the paper towel. Yeah, I like that. I feel like it's coming together now with this darker violet right here, even more so. It needed to get a little bit darker, I think, to I don't know, find its place. I guess, I don't know, having this Milky Way in here, it's working with a real established value, a darker value. But boy, that sure looks blue to me. I wonder if I accidentally re-inked my violet pad with a number 3 blue. I don't know. It looks better to me, though. I always mention this, but when you're working on a scene such as this, I tend to lose track of time, and kind of from a mental standpoint, it's somewhat transportive, so I don't know, I haven't even thought about the how hot it is sitting here right now, even though I have a fan on me, and the air conditioning's been running a little bit, but it's still really quite hot. But I'm not really thinking about it when I'm working on this right here. It's one of the nice things about scenic stamping, because you're doing certain locations, that are referencing the real world. You kind of become transported into these settings while you're working on them. I don't know, maybe for someone that looks at it too, but I think especially when you're physically making something like this or creating it. That is black. Okay. It doesn't look real super black because it's being layered over blues and violets, so it's some other nice rich version of black. Just a really deep, rich hue. And as I'm doing this, kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about doing those white pigment ink rays. Like I said, I haven't done that before using this ray stamp. But then I haven't really used the rays with the Milky Way before. But I like the look here. Okay, white pigment ink. Let's kind of follow some of these rays and extend them a little bit into that night sky. Now I'm going to taper this one because I don't want to cover up and just have this big solid beam going right across my Milky Way, because that's not what an Aurora Borealis is supposed to be, northern lights. So let's just do it really quite lightly. I'm not picking out a designated vantage point here like I normally do if these represent crepuscular rays or light beams coming from a central source. This one's going to be a little bit different here. Okay, starting in the lower portion where it's really light, and then I'll just transition this into this darker area. Okay, and I'll try to I'll taper it. Try to have it a little bit thicker in the lighter area, and then as I move out, kind of lighter tapping and a thinner application of media. Okay, so something like that. So that right there, it just extends that beam out quite a bit, but I don't know. I think it looks fairly dramatic. Or really taper this one right here, where it just kind of disappears like that. See that beam kind of coming up like that? It's turning into more like spotlights than kind of an Aurora Borealis, but I think it looks pretty cool. And that's why I'm just trying to keep it fairly subtle. It's always kind of fun to take that mask off and see what things are looking like. All right, look at that. Isn't that fun? I think it really added something really nice to this piece. What's fun for me is anytime you do something that you haven't done before, too, it's always fun to see what it looks like. So I haven't done like these beams, I don't think, running through the Milky Way, and I haven't used the Aurora Borealis Northern Light type of image with the Milky Way. Not that I can remember, at least. I'm trading a little bit of a transition for those beams. Sometimes having something that kind of straight and I wouldn't call it harsh, but really super defined like that. What I'm doing is I'm just softening the part where it's emanating from down here, just so it's not just this kind of isolated hard beam right there. So right around down in here, you can see that I'm kind of blotting this around like that. Okay. Maybe over here a little bit. Let's add a little bit down like this. See that? It just creates a little bit of a stronger relationship between this area and this beam. It's like the birth of the that, I don't know, light source or whatever. Okay. That combination is becoming a little bit more dynamic, maybe, than what I thought it would be. Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White is an opaque white watercolor paint. Comes in a jar. If you use it like I use it, which is quite a bit, but pretty minimally. I don't know how long it lasts. It seems like 10 to 20 years. But like I said, I don't use a huge amount of it. I use it on quite a few scenes, though, but I put it on a toothbrush, then I just really get a lot of the excess amount out of there. You know, first of all, I don't want a big blob of it to go, you know, to land on my piece. If it did, I can just wipe it off on this glossy cardstock, even, you know, when it's wet or when it's dry, but I just assume not have to do that. Okay, let's get some stars down here like this. I'm going to put this like this. Normally I'd have this flat. Well, okay, actually I can have it flat. I thought you might be able to see it easier if I hold it up like this and I splatter paint it. Well, let's do it both ways, okay? All right. So watch my thumb right here. I'm not just streaking across there and getting this big, you know, gigantic splatter out like that. Okay, I'm just moving like a couple bristles at a time. And the toothbrush splatters out like that. Now, the thinner the paint is, the smaller the dot you can achieve. But I like a little bit of variation, which I'm getting right here. I'm getting some small dots. Let's see if I can focus. Yeah, small dots and some large dots. But isn't that dynamic right there? This is like one of the easiest techniques to add a really, really strong dimension to a piece. I like it even in daytime scenes, waterfalls and whatnot. What I like about it is it gives you a lot of variation. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get too. The paint's thicker. I don't know, the bristles are more stiff one day or whatever, softer another day because you might have cleaned it recently or something like that. I don't know. Or some residual paint is left in there, so they're a little bit stiffer. So it comes out a little bit different every time. Alright, now this one I really gave a pretty thick coating to, but I don't know, it adds to that kind of celestial type of feel, doesn't it? Still have the rays down here. Now, if you want to get a little bit more variation too, it doesn't have to be like a one thing or another type of application. I still like to go for some hand applied dots. This is my white paint pen here. I could go for a larger star here. Amongst the spray, especially if I didn't get very much of a variation. You can add your constellations in here. If you know your constellations, I don't know mine. I know a few, but not much. Here's Orion's belt and sword, maybe, and you might know the Big Dipper or something like that. The North Star. M31. Alright, so there's my variation. You can see some of those larger dots in there. This area right here looks like a glare from the the lights, doesn't it? But it's the white pigment ink there. Alright, this is a blue gel pen. You can add in some blue stars. If you have a glitter pen, it would be fantastic in here. I usually go with my color scheme, blues and pinks or whatever, and then I'll add the same type of color scheme into my piece using specialized pens like glitter pens, pastel gel pens, paint pens, whatever you want to use. Okay. Alright, now I want to add some trees in here. I mean, you can do it in that type of angled type of application if you want. I thought I've always used pine trees in this type of scenario so often. Of course, this would look really good too. Gosh, with the trees like this on the bottom, those light coming from like that. I might have to change up. I really like this, I think. But I was saying, I've used those pine trees so often in a scene like this. I was thinking about going for the oak branch in this one. Alright, now I want to go with a fairly dark application of this. So I think the VersaFine black pigment ink will be a good choice. And the oak branch, it has been designed where it's a little bit heavier on one side and lighter on the other. You can use whatever portion you want for your needs. I'm going to do it like that, I think. I can have an overhanging tree like this. It can be like this as well. You can have it just completely engulfing it like that, like you're looking up through the oak tree into the night sky. Maybe we'll do that. We'll just start adding this, okay? See what it looks like, and we'll adjust accordingly. See that right there? Now, if you're using this, just make sure that pigment ink will dry on glossy cardstock wherever you are. It just in some areas, it just does not dry very well. But if you're out here in the West, in Arizona or whatever, especially in California today, this should dry just fine. It doesn't dry instantly, though. I mean, we're talking about, I might have to leave it for a day or two. For me, I think out here, this will dry in a few hours adequately. I still wouldn't run my finger across it or something like that, but look at that. Isn't that kind of bringing out, that background even more by having something so dark right next to it? I'll kind of group that impression with this one a little bit more, so it's not so isolated, an image, and so repetitious, like that. Okay. I'm thinking about this one word stamp in here that says, "Lie on your back and look at the stars." That might look really good in here. Okay, evaluating if I want any more around here. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go a little bit denser right here. Checking to see if I've inked up enough of it. Always ink up more than you think you'll need. Yeah, I think I like that right there. Okay, let me do a little quick evaluation on the quote stamp. Decide if I want to use it or not. Okay, I think this one right here. Lie on your back and look at the stars. As far as placement of it goes, I'm thinking right here, maybe. I mean, it can fit anywhere, but it just has to be, well, if it's really dark, I could stamp it in white ink, but I think it would be better if I stamped it in black in this case. It's not so dark in certain areas where the white, if I stamped it, would be in a white pigment ink, and I just don't think it would show up real well, so I'm going to stamp it in black somewhere. And I can do it in that VersaFine black, but I think I'm going to do it in a Marvy black. Marvy black's a little bit, less dark and black than the versifying one, so that's what I kind of want. I want it to kind of recess a little bit. I have to go for a little bit of a kind of a practice. I can tell where my stamp pad is a little bit wetter than others, you know, too. And just go right down right here. Kind of interesting to stamp this line your back and look at the stars embossed. It wouldn't recess, I mean, it would be kind of poking out, but that would be another good option. Okay. Lie on your back and look at the stars. Okay. I always like having things kind of flying around in the sky, too. Some birds. Or whatnot. And, I don't know, I think it gives it an even kind of dreamier feel, even though birds wouldn't be kind of flying around in that night sky like that, but like the Milky Way and Aurora Borealis, you wouldn't have that amount of stars quite so visible, but like I say, in stamping you can do anything, you can create things however you want. That would look kind of interesting. Two people floating out in space. That would be for my Twilight Zone piece. Okay, let me go look for a couple birds to use in. Okay, flock large, and then I have the small flock here. A lot of times I use them in conjunction with one another. Okay, so those right there. See, they're kind of going up in the sky like that. The eagles would have been a good choice too, but I've used those so many times in this nighttime sky thing. Those are my favorite ones to use in something like this, but I really like those ones kind of going up there like that. I like to use those too with clouds as well. Alright, so, yeah, I didn't stamp that real straight, but I don't care. Okay, so let's see here. I think a little pigment ink around, you know, some of these stars to make them glow a little bit more would be good. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do that or not, but why not? It only takes like 30 seconds to do it or something like that. For all the stars, might as well. Pigment ink on a Q-tip. Blot off. Blot off quite a bit, okay? So that you have just a little bit of a dry application of it. You see that little kind of glowing star there? It glows because there's not a glob of it. It just gives, you know, just a real thin application of pigment ink around it. See that right there? Okay? And just light tapping. Don't tap it once and they, oh my god, nothing's coming off. So you tap it really hard and then a big blob comes off. Just, you know, get those taps, get that glow. Achieve your glow by, I don't know, 10 taps or something like that. It doesn't take long. I just take it really gingerly like that. And, you know, it glows however much I want it to glow. If I want it really light, I just go for a couple taps like that. Sometimes a couple taps, you can't see anything at all. But look at that. Aren't those stars kind of glowing now? In there? Okay. Maybe hit one. I don't want to go over right there because that branch is right there and it's still really wet from the... Yeah, I was tempted to go in there. I don't want to do that. Okay, so anyways, you get these glowing stars. Glowing stars really... They make a big impact, don't they? By putting a little pigment ink over them. Don't those little glowing ones really stand out now? I'll put one of these stars in the beam, make that kind of stand out by a little bit of a pigment ink on it, like so. Alright, I think that is it. There you have your Aurora Borealis stamp, used in conjunction with the Milky Way. And I think that looks pretty good. I don't know, it's fun having that, those beams of light. See, if I would have done it like this, well, you know, that wouldn't have been, that word stamp wouldn't be there, but if that wasn't there, I think this would look good too, in this vertical format. I think that looks good coming from the right-hand side. I don't know, it looks more natural to me coming from the left for some reason. And even this, I think, doesn't look too bad. On this one right here, before I stamped out, you know, that word, if that word wasn't in here, I could even stamp out the Lakeside Cove in here. And it could be this light coming from above, and you can have these star reflections in the water. It looked a little more surreal or whatnot. But when I flip it like this, for some reason, this looks like water or something like that to me. You know, and if I had like a Lakeside Cove or something in here, or Palm Islands or something like that, I think it would look pretty cool. But anyways, we ended up with this. And I don't know, just a lot of fun. A little bit of a slight twist on some other type of celestial themed scenes I've done in the past, in terms of the imagery used, as well as the foreground imagery in this case. I think I've been using mostly pines in the past and doing that thing where they're all kind of angled into perspective and whatnot. But I don't know, I think the oak branch worked really good too. It just, I don't know, it turns it into a different kind of location or whatnot. Okay, let me see if I need to adjust my... Yeah, the exposure looks pretty good. What you see in the camera here, that's pretty much how dark the scene is, I think. So, anyway, alright, so this one goes out to Barbara, who asked about this, and these two scenes. She's going to be doing a 12 by 12 piece, I think on a snowflake, okay? So it'll be configured differently than this one. But, you know, with this Aurora Borealis thing too, I mean, you could have it coming from different angles like this. You know, you can have it coming from down here. It would complicate things a little bit in terms of your ink application, but you could do it where you have multiple angles of it. It may not, you know, reflect kind of a more realistic use of those rays, the Aurora Borealis, but neither does this one, because this one's kind of coming in from the side like that. You know, you just don't have it kind of like that, so it kind of just turned it into beams that way. But I think it still has that, you know, that celestial kind of, I don't know, whatever, kind of different type of northern light type of, I don't know, feel to it. Okay, so anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe.